I complained a lot. I wanted things to be done a certain way, and I wanted certain things done, and I wanted them done now. And I was not good with being patient at all. Um, my husband is very handy. And so I just assumed he could just do whatever I wanted him to, right when I wanted him to. And if he would take his time to um, do something that he wanted to do or just relax, I was very resentful of that.
Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your marriage without your man's conscious effort so that you feel desired, taken care of, and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today we're unpacking what is emotional cheating. My guest Maxine was grouchy and resentful that her husband wouldn't do things for her, no matter how creatively she nagged him. But she made some changes, and today her marriage feels really good. And she knows that her husband just wants to make her happy and that she has the key. She's going to tell us what she did so you can do it too. But first, let's talk about what is emotional cheating. And you might be looking for the line or wanting to know the letter of the law because you suspect your man is just a little too emotionally intimate with another woman, which feels terrible. It's threatening because emotional intimacy is a big part of how you two fell in love to begin with. So it could signal that he's falling for someone else. And that's not what you agreed to. That's not right. You shouldn't have to feel afraid that some other woman is having the connection to him emotionally that you want to have, or that she might have bigger plans for his future, because these things can happen when there's an emotional connection between a man and a woman. But where's the line on emotional cheating? If it was clear that he was over the line or headed there, then you could confront him and make him admit that he's cheating emotionally. And that might make him wake up and realize that he's not following the vows he made to you. And then he'd go back to being emotionally intimate with you and only you. He'd keep his distance from her or blow her off like he should. But what if he's not over the line? What if he's just being friendly and there's nothing to worry about? What if he's just friends with a woman and there's absolutely no harm in it? Here are some questions that can help you find peace and restore your own sense of safety about your husband's emotional connections. Number one, what would you have that you don't have now if your husband wasn't cheating emotionally? What would you have that you don't have now if your husband wasn't cheating emotionally? I mean, imagine that your man voluntarily removed himself from the emotional cheating situation completely. She's out of the picture. Phew! Isn't that a relief? Now, what do you have that you didn't have before? How is your life better? Maybe you feel more secure. Maybe you feel more special. Maybe in your vision, you get more of his time and attention because he's having more intimate conversations with you now that he's not having them with someone else. Your life is so much better because she's out of the picture, right? Well, what I'm about to share with you is not the same as emotional cheating at all. It's very different. But at my house, my husband watched a lot of TV, and it upset me greatly because, first of all, I thought it was a waste of time. I thought it was bad for him and he shouldn't be rotting his brain. And also because the TV was robbing me of a lot of our time together. So I had a fantasy that we would get rid of the TV, and I just knew that my life would be so much better if it was gone because then he couldn't watch it so much. But now that I've been practicing the intimacy skills for a couple of decades, I realize the TV was not the problem. It was never the problem. We have an even bigger TV now with more channels. But that isn't an issue at our house. He doesn't even watch that much TV now. But if he did decide to, I'd be fine with it. I'd probably make him snacks. I'd see it as his self-care because the TV is not a threat to our relationship. My focus on the TV robbing me of intimacy and connection with John, That was just an illusion. But Laura, you might say, emotional cheating is so much different. I mean, there's a woman he's texting and laughing with or sharing with or talking to at work. Your husband was never going to leave you to just be with his TV. And I get that. It's scary. You can certainly make a case that his confiding in another woman is dangerous and that you need to do something about it ASAP. Which brings me to the next question to ask yourself. Question number 2 is, how is the emotional safety at your house? Emotional safety is when you can admit a big mistake you made and not feel judged or blamed. It's where you know that no matter what you say, the listener is on your side and sees you as the hero in the story, as the good guy, not the bad guy, not the village idiot. Every human craves that because we all want to feel seen, heard, and understood and loved. And emotional safety allows us to have those things. Now, one way to tell if it's emotionally safe at your house is to ask yourself if there is laughter. Is there playfulness? That's an indicator that you both feel safe. Like when here, John, will sometimes lock me out in the backyard just so he can stand at the sliding glass door and say, ha, 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 ha. And then I could say, grow up, John. This is so immature and silly, right? He says, sorry, this is all you get. But what if there's no emotional safety at your house? What if you feel defensive and scared? Or what if he does? What if it's tense and uncomfortable because you feel he's cheating on you emotionally? What about that? In my experience, you have a lot of power to restore the emotional safety single-handedly by expecting the best from him, not the worst. By seeing him as a trustworthy guy, not someone you better spy on to make sure he hasn't crossed the line, or someone you need to explain what emotional cheating is to. You might worry that acting like you can trust him when you have plenty of evidence that you really can't is leaving reality, and that would just make you a fool. But it's amazing how people live up to your expectations for them. If you focus on how he's cheating emotionally, there's a subtext that he's already betrayed you or plans to betray you, and he knows that. What if you went back to seeing him as the good guy? How might that restore emotional safety? And how might having lots of emotional safety make you feel safe and special, just like you're wanting? Question number 3, what is happening on your paper? What's happening on your paper? One big mistake I was making when I was obsessing over John's TV watching was neglecting my own life. And part of the reason I was so desperate for him to change so I could be happy was that I wasn't making myself happy. So I was bored, tired, overworked, pretty miserable. And that was dreary. At first, I didn't even know what would make me happy, except for him to pay more attention to me and stop watching so much TV, which he wouldn't do. And now I can see why. And that's what I thought was wrong. But really, I wasn't letting myself have so many things like volleyball or creative self-expression and writing, which I also love, or girl talk and sushi and so many other things. My life was going by and no one was tending to it. So I was cranky. I was a prickly porcupine wife he didn't want to hurt, but didn't want to get too close to either, out of self-preservation. And then I got happier and I was safer to be around for him. And now he wants to connect with me all the time, all day, every day. And he connects with other people too, just like I do. So it might be interesting to check on your paper where you have all the power to make decisions for yourself about how you spend your time, when you go to bed, how much work you do, the words you use. If you dedicated yourself to your happiness, what would you be doing today that you haven't been doing? And once you are feeling ridiculously happy, how would you show up differently? When I'm filled up and relaxed and happy, I can see through the illusion that if someone else changes, it will make me happy. I don't like to waste my energy or hurt the intimacy trying to control someone I can't control, like my husband's other relationships. And funny thing, when I stop trying to control, I get such a better response from my husband. That's when I can most clearly see that while he's not a perfect man, he's perfect for me. If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. My guest, Maxine, was grouchy and resentful that her husband wouldn't do things for her, no matter how creatively she nagged him. But she made some changes, and today her marriage feels really good. And she knows her husband just wants to make her happy and that she has the key. She's going to tell us what she did so you can do it too. Maxine, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura. I really appreciate you having me.
Well, tell us what things were like in the bad old days.
Well, sometimes I feel bad because I think my bad old days are not that bad. But then I complained a lot. I wanted things to be done a certain way, and I wanted certain things done, and I wanted them done now. And I was not good with being patient at all. My husband is very handy. And so I just assumed he could just do whatever I wanted him to, right when I wanted him to. And if he would take his time to um, do something that he wanted to do or just relax, I was very resentful of that because I thought, we have a larger family and I'm doing all of this work all of the time. And, you're just sitting in the chair, you're just relaxing. And that would really make me upset. And I didn't always complain right at him. I would come up with these like what I thought were not nagging, but really were ways of complaining at him. And when he didn't respond to that, that just annoyed me and made me, I think, more resentful sometimes. Because
I love it. You're a creative nagger. Like, what kinds of things did you say that you felt like, okay, that's not really nagging, and hopefully this will work? Because
yeah,
I would tag.
Yeah, I would tag onto it that like we need to do this for our family, or like this is our obligation. Like and I would say I need you to do this, but it would not be a pure desire. Like that was so foreign. It was like I expected it, and I was resentful when it didn't happen. And I also would say, our kids are growing up. They're gonna be out of the house before we get this done. So I justified it in a creative way that I didn't think was nagging, which I don't know how I thought that, but yeah.
Yeah. How was he responding to your we need this for the family, or the kids are gonna be grown? But I mean I love that because that's the kind of thing I used to do too.
Yeah, he would listen, but he would never do anything. And or it'd take forever. And maybe 3 weeks isn't forever, but it was to me. And it was almost like he couldn't make me happy because I was too impatient.
Mm. And so there was some tension around the house, it sounds like.
There was, yeah.
Yeah, I get it. And was there ever a moment where you thought, oh my gosh, we cannot go on like this?
Well, that's kind of why I wanted to interview with you, is because I didn't think our marriage was in trouble. Like it was fine in my eyes. We had done different things, it wasn't like we fought. We would have occasional cold wars. But my husband is I really have a really good husband, and he put up
Mm.
with a lot. And so I thought, I didn't think we needed it. The way I came about your book was through a Facebook group of people I'm in, that they discovered you and they're like, "Hey, this is so cool." And I saw the title, The Empowered Wife, and because I'm uh, a very strong woman,
Hmm.
I already considered myself empowered, and I was like, "Oh, that's good for the rest of you, but I don't need it, you know."
Right.
And
Right.
and so I kind of just ignored it. And then I started seeing some of their stories of, "Oh, I'm trying this," and I was like, maybe we need to look into this, you know? And so I did. I got bored with the podcast I was listening to, and I looked your podcast up, and it smacked me in the face because I was like, oh my goodness, I am not doing any of these skills. And so I got the book and I read the book, and the book smacked me again because I was doing nothing in the book, right? Except gratitude. And the gratitude is purely because we have children and they need a good example. I have a pet peeve with people who are ungracious. And so I was decent with gratitude. But otherwise, no, I was flunking in the intimacy skills.
I'm sorry I smacked you around so much, Maxine. That was that was not kind. But it sounds like you kind of got invigorated from being smacked around.
I I did. It made me I felt when I read your book that there was like I knew there was like something missing from our marriage. You know, I wouldn't say it was loveless, it wasn't, or lifeless, but I had gotten to a point where I thought my husband was boring. You know, he would hardly say anything. He didn't do anything I wanted him to. and and when I read it, that's what smacked me because I that was the first thing I did. I just thought, you know, I'll try the duct tape. Let's see, what can it hurt? Because you talked about how men sometimes need time to respond, more than 2 seconds. And yes, my husband, so we had made this, like, we did a lot of things to try and make our marriage good. We really did. And we would get up early, we still do, and we get up early and have coffee before the kids woke up so we could talk about the day. But that had turned in, and I realized how controlling I was. That had turned into me yip yapping the whole morning. And then when I would think, oh, he's so boring. So what I did is, that was the first place I thought, I'll try this. I put the duct tape on. I would say something, ask him something about the day, say something, and then I put the duct tape on. And I had to count and be so patient at first. And then he started to respond. And
Mm.
that was, I was like, wow, this could work. And so I used a lot. I still do. I use a lot of duct tape. Sometimes while I'm waiting for him to respond, I'll like think about what my duct tape looks like to keep me from taking it off and talking anyway.
I love it. You see, have all different brands of duct tape in your head that you're
Yes.
imagining. That's
Yeah.
keeping you from um, kind of jumping into the conversation. You're trying to create space
Right.
for him to
Right.
share what's on his heart and mind as well. Sounds like.
Right.
Yeah, well, so I love this. And I also just love that it wasn't that bad. You weren't, it doesn't sound like you were on the brink of divorce.
No. Mm-mm.
There was just a low level, maybe there was some suffering, some misery, I guess I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think some people could say, well, this is just how marriage is. Like it's not going to be fireworks and roses every day. But you're having a different experience now, it sounds like.
Yes.
Gotcha. So, so you started using the duct tape and then he started to speak more.
Mm-hmm.
What other skills did you, or what else did you do differently than what you had been doing before?
Well, I didn't think I needed self-care at first. I thought, oh, Laura just doesn't understand. I have too many kids.
Right. How many kids do
Someone's
you
got
have, Maxine?
so we just had our eighth.
Oh, wow.
And
Congratulations.
I love being a mother, but I was like, she just doesn't know. I have no time. You
No.
know,
Yeah,
I can't do these things. And so
that's it.
I didn't do it at first, but I kept listening to the podcast, and so many other women I feel would say, oh, I didn't do it at first, but then I did, and it helped so much. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll try. Because I think in your book, you talk about, you know, and no, getting the laundry done is not self care. But But I do feel better when the laundry's done. It does. But no. So seriously, I just tried to do little things like I would sit down and enjoy my coffee while it was hot instead of finding it cold and just drinking it anyway. And just little things like that. I would brush my hair. Like I'd gotten to such a point where I sometimes didn't brush my hair. I just put it in a dirty bun. And so I would take the time to brush my hair and pick out earrings and just little things. But those actually helped a lot. And then with the duct tape, I was like, okay, wow, I can do this. My big aha moment, I think, was we had a on Sundays we'd come home, and if we hadn't drank all our coffee, I know this will disgust some people, but my husband would pour the little bit left over to heat up to add to the new pot. Okay, and it's just the way we roll.
Uh-huh.
And he was getting ready to pour it to heat it, and he was making the coffee, and I was fixing breakfast, and I think the aha moment was I didn't realize how criticizing I was because I got ready to say, oh, would you please not spill that? Because he always did and made a mess. And I didn't. I put the duct tape on and I didn't even watch. And he poured it and didn't make a mess. And I was like, okay, thinking in my head, I need to say something. So I was like, oh, good job, honey. And his words are what cut me. He said, yeah, I'm so surprised. I was waiting for you to yell at me. And that's when I realized I could do something with this and that it was going to get better because he wasn't that hard. I have a really good husband. And so that was when I kind of like rededicated. That was maybe 6 weeks in. I'm like, okay, I'm really going to try to do all of these skills because the few I'm doing are really helping. And nothing, I've not had any bad response from it. That criticism to me that he gave was just, it was just, I needed to hear it. And, but then the baiting set in because I was being so quiet because every time I opened my mouth, I had to ask myself, is it a criticism? Am I preaching? Am I complaining? Like I began to realize how negative I was that I was saying very little because I was trying really hard not to be all of these controlling variations that I realize now I was. And so when I was and I think he just missed me talking. My husband gets, I think, a little bit of a kick out of my slightly sarcastic, I don't know, but sometimes he'll poke me because he likes to hear like the mean thing I might say. And so that was hard. And so we entered this baiting that lasted forever. And I so many times wanted to just smack him, but I didn't. I just kept my duct tape on. That lasted through Christmas, which there's a funny story with Christmas because I had trained my husband not to give me things. He would bring me the occasional flower home. And I did thank him for that, but I'm very practical. I don't need gifts because he couldn't pick the right one anyway.
Right.
So I had trained him not to get me gifts. And so at Christmas, that's where I tried the pure desire thing because I didn't need a gift. But I was like, okay, I really could use new kitchen towels. And so I sent him a text one day saying, Christmas is coming and I don't know if it's hopeful or not, which is totally not the right language, I understand. But I was like, I would love some new kitchen towels. My towels are kind of falling apart, just thought I'd let you know. And he sent me a thing saying, okay, thanks, and dropped it. And we dropped it. And so Christmas came and we were opening presents and he totally didn't get them for me because, I had trained him. But as we were all opening our gifts, it dawned on him that I had mentioned this, I think, and he felt so bad. He kept apologizing all the, and I was like, it's okay, no worries. And he ended up excusing himself to go to our bedroom and find me towels that he ordered Christmas Day. That's because of how bad I felt about it. Yeah.
Wow.
And so
yeah, he got inspired again. So in other words, all the years of training, how many years have you been married?
Almost 18.
Almost 18.
Mm-hmm.
So all those years of training where you're like, don't buy me a gift. It's kind of like it's a waste of money, it sounds like,
Mm-hmm.
or you're not gonna get the right thing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
All it took was just one time saying I would love towels. I would love some dish
Mm-hmm.
towels for him to
Mm-hmm.
get motivated and inspired. And it was a little slow in the uptake. In a perfect world, it
Mm-hmm.
would have been nice to have him say, "Oh, here's the dish towels I got you on Christmas morning." But the dots, he kind of connected the dots a little bit later, and
Mm-hmm.
then he couldn't buy them fast enough, it sounds like, to
Mm-hmm.
make you happy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got to see that he really he does care about making you happy.
Right. No, he
Yeah.
does. That I'd never, that was just something foreign to me when your book mentioned that. I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I didn't believe it or if I just thought I just never thought about it, I think,
Yeah.
really.
Or I think I mean I just remember feeling like you did too that well he's not going to buy the right thing anyway. This is just as
Hmm.
practical. It's fine for dating, but not for marriage, right? We have too many expenses. But it kind of kills it can kill some of the romance in your marriage too.
No, it does. It totally does.
So now you're a
So I
better
had mentioned,
receiver.
no, I'm not a good receiver, and that's something I've definitely had to work on. Um, and I noticed there are a lot of things in your book that you apply to your husband that I noticed really trickled down to my into my kids.
Oh,
And so I have a sweet story that happened over. So during this time of baiting, it was over Christmas. It was about 6 weeks, and he had started a project to make our girls' room bigger, and he was almost finished with it, but he'd run out of time. He'd taken off, and so it wasn't quite wrapped up. And my daughter came home from school. She's our oldest. She's 17 now. But she came home from school, and this was another eye opener where I realized my behavior, how much it was influencing our kids. Because she came in, I was folding laundry in my room, and she hung her head in the door and she's like, Mom, when is Dad going to finish my room? And it sounded just like me. And so I was like, oh my goodness, how am I going to handle this? So I was real honest with her. I said, honey, I'm working on this new set of skills to be a better wife. And I'm going to ask you the same question. I'm going to ask you the question back. And of course, she was a little bit confused. But I said, pretend you're dad for a moment and I'm you. And he comes home, he's worked all day, and you can say one of two things. You can say what you just said. You can say, Dad, when are you going to get my room done? Or I said, or you could say, Dad, I'm looking so forward to when my room's finished. Thank you so much for doing this for me. And her face just like did what my whole I've been going through, up to this point of, oh my goodness, that is so different. And she said, I'd want him to say the second one. And so I said, well, I just want to point that out because I've not done things very well. So later
oh,
that day, he comes home from work and we have dinner and, family time. And then all the kids are in bed and she'd been doing homework. And he went in to tell our youngest in the room good night and tell her good night. And she did. She was like, Dad, I'm looking so, what I told her, to say and thank you. And he apologized. He was like,
oh,
honey, I'm so sorry it's taking so long. And I was just so happy because I'd been doing things so wrong for so long.
oh my gosh. It must have felt so good to be able to pass this on to your daughter and teach her how to show up in a way that's inspiring and grateful instead of
Yes.
nagging and complaining, which turns people off.
Right, right, right. So the
Oh,
baiting stopped once I told him we were expecting. And it was night, it was like a light switch. He didn't bait at all. He was asking what he could do. He was thanking me for the baby. I had to do a special diet. Um, my husband, something else I've always harped on him was, his health, his health. And so I hadn't done that for like at this point, maybe 3 or 4 months of me doing your skills. And one night at dinner, I was eating different stuff than they were. And he was like, is there anything I can do to help you with your diet? And I said, I would love if you could maybe do it with me just at dinner because then it'd just be easier. I'd feel like I had a buddy eating with me and that would make it easier for me. And so he went full circle and started like eating all of his meals the way I was. So it was not only easier for dinner, but because then for having lunches ready. And he really got on this like health bandwagon that I'd wanted him to do for, 10 plus years. And I hadn't said anything. I just asked him to eat dinner with me. And I mean, he was eating dinner with us, but what I was eating as opposed to everyone else. And that really touched me because I've been trying to get him healthier for a long time.
I love this. So imagine if you had said, hey, this diet I'm on is so much healthier for you. You should get on it too.
Right.
Never would have worked. It sounds like he would
No,
never, not even one meal would happen that
no,
way.
no.
But you kind of figuring out what you needed. And I love, actually, I really love how you figured out your desire and said that, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd love if you were eating the same thing at dinner. This is how you can support me, basically, is what you were
Mm-hmm.
saying. And he
Mm-hmm.
wanted to support you. So, yeah, it's super sweet story. And then he got
Mm-hmm.
kind of motivated to make every meal the same as yours. So, same man, huh? He's the
Yes.
same guy?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, just making sure. Just making sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, so the apologizing, that was kind of interesting too, because that trickled down into our teenage sons. And again, going back, like duct tape, I think is like, it's, it's like the, um, everything has to be built on that duct tape, Laura.
It's foundational, yes.
It is.
To have a
Um,
thought and not have it come out your mouth is pretty
right.
important. Yeah.
Right. Well, so I stopped preaching. Like I stopped being, with my kids. And I've always been fairly good about helping each of them where they're at because they're not all the same age. They're all different people. And I took pride in the fact that I tried to figure out, their temperaments and help them. But the duct tape really, I saw how wordy and preachy I was. I couldn't just say, like with correcting them, because sometimes they do need to know that they did something the wrong way. I couldn't just do it with a sentence. I had to like go on and on and on. And the first time I tried not doing that, of using the duct tape, my son had, I don't even remember what it was, but he had clearly not taken something out and it was stinky in the basement. And so after school, I was like, I had told him, I'm like, I really need that out. And next time, please don't leave it all day. And that's all I said. Now, normally I would have gone on pontificating. And he was upset because who wants to have their mom remind them of something that they know they should do? And so he huffed, but because I just stopped, he like huffed and realized it was over and turned and went to go do it. And I went back to what I was doing. And like 15 minutes later, he came in and I didn't turn around because I didn't know it was him. He came into the room to go on upstairs, and I hear him say, "Mom, I won't do that again. I'm really sorry." And it bowled me over because I'm like, okay, I'm never going to be preachy again because it
You didn't,
doesn't seem to work anyway.
you're
And this
getting,
is so magical. I mean,
wow. So this is affecting not just your marriage, it's affecting the whole family,
it
the
is.
way you're showing
Yeah,
up.
it is.
Uh,
And just learning how to express pure desires. I'm still struggling a little bit with the self-fulfilling prophecy of just I have to actually think about it. Sometimes I need to write it down. Like I have this notebook that I keep hidden away. I write things down so I can practice because I am coming from such a place of negativity, of just old habits. But uh yeah, I see them really just blossom. They're like, oh, they're happy to do something just depending on how you say it. It's still the same outcome. I mean, you still kind of like with the jobs again. That was another thing once my husband stopped the baiting. He asked me one Sunday, he's like, well, I have some free time coming because I hadn't asked him to do anything, Laura. Once I started the duct tape, I'm like, I don't care if no project gets done. I'm not going to ask him to do anything because that's all I've done this whole time. And so he just started asking me, he'd ask me, well, I have some free time. What would you like me to do? Well, and that's so much easier. Him saying, what can I do for you? And then me saying, well, could we fix this? Because that's broken. And, compared to when are you going to do this? When are you going to do this? It's just so ugly. And I think that's the biggest thing. I've been so humbled by how ugly I was. And um yeah, just yeah.
Well, I love your accountability, Maxine, and your humility. And I hear it was, I mean, it is a little painful. I remember feeling so much pain too when I realized how I'd been showing up in my marriage and how much destruction I'd caused, or just kind of a tension in my house. And but I think it's, it takes something. It takes a lot of yeah, incredible accountability to just be aware of that and own it, and then decide to do something different, which you did, and all from just reading the book The Empowered Wife and listening to this podcast, it sounds like, which is it's pretty impressive. So what is your marriage like now?
It's it's really amazing. I'm really sorry. I'm gonna cry. Sorry. But my husband now he'll just tell me I'm so wonderful and thank you for all you do. And he'll say, I want to be better for our family. Um, and he tells me he loves me a lot more often. And uh, he wants to hug me more often. I'm not a prickly porcupine anymore. And the other thing I was back to the receiving is he would tell me, I looked nice or I was beautiful. And I was so mean. I don't, I think a lot of us women struggle with our confident level, but, I would say, oh, that I'm just beautiful because you love me. No,
I'm
I'm
dismissing.
not really.
Yeah, yeah.
But, that I would say those kind of things. And so I've just started saying, thank you. Um, and that's hard too, to say thank you and not make excuses. I did start a little surrender circle, Laura. It kind of happened organically. I'd had a lady shortly after I started doing the duct tape kind of just complain to me that she just didn't know what was wrong with her marriage. And so I just shared your book. And then it ended up that there are five of us in this little, we call it our Better Wives group, but we meet every other month. And it's been so nice. But we do practice sometimes. The first time I think we did practice, the whole making a compliment to each other and not saying anything but thank you, which it sounds so silly, but you do have to practice that kind of stuff because we're so used to saying, someone saying, oh, your dress is beautiful, and you have to disc it by saying, oh, well, I got it at a thrift store or whatever. And that's something I still struggle with, but I am getting better. So
That's awesome that you guys that you got together to support each other, and you're practicing receiving compliments graciously, because it does help, right? As you go into and what I hear you saying is it feels a little uncomfortable when your husband tells you you're beautiful and you just say thank you. You just kind of let that land, take it in.
mm-hmm,
Maybe because you're not used to it, or just maybe feels a little vulnerable.
mm-hmm, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. But great job. Just and you were saying earlier that your husband seemed so boring before. Does
Mm-hmm.
he still seem boring now?
No, it's really interesting. Like he comes home and has stuff to share that sometimes is still boring to me, like because he likes sports and stuff. But I love the fact that no, but like before he wouldn't even bother sharing it with me, because he knew I wasn't interested. But I've learned to listen and find things that are interesting about, not everything is like that, but just not everything he brings home is super exciting to me. But I've learned, that I have to again pick the intimacy over control. And it's interesting how when you think aren't going to like something, if you just give it time. I'm not a sport enthusiast now, but I don't mind. Like, I enjoy hearing what he likes and enjoys too. And so it's helped, yeah, it's helped in a lot of ways just to grow together. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Sounds like you're getting to connect just by being a good conversationalist, which means a good listener. You're just showing
Hmm.
up with that
Yeah.
skill a little more. Yeah, I think that's great, Maxine. So, what do you think if someone is maybe stuck where you were, where she just wishes he would get some things done and she's feeling like he's kind of boring? And there's just kind of a little bit of a malaise around the house. Like it's just marriage is just kind of a grind. It's not exciting or fun. Um, but she wants what you have now, where she feels, that she feels like there's great connection and they have these great conversations, and he just wants to make her happy. And he says, "I have some free time. What can I do for you?" What's your tip for her?
To get out of your own way, um, just to let just I think focusing on myself, becoming a better person, I had that's what really changed all of this. Um, of just instead of looking at him and how he was doing things wrong or not the way I liked, of asking myself, well, but would what I did, I think for myself, is I began to look, especially after the coffee incident, I began to think, what if we were in opposite places? I would be so pipped with how he was treating me if the table was turned. And that helped just for me to focus on myself, how can I change it? What have I been doing wrong or not as loving? And time, I think you say, very few of us are married to bad men. I think time changes a lot. It takes time. The other thing that I think helped me was at first, because I am so impatient. I kept reminding myself, you've been married 17 plus years. You've been training him this long. Like, if this isn't going to change overnight, this is a long haul. You've got to be in this for the long haul. And it really, I mean, we still have plenty of room to grow. I feel I'm excited to read your book. Things will get as good as you can stand, or something like that.
Yeah.
I want to read that next. But it didn't take that long to begin to see improvement. And so
Mhm.
I would just encourage women, just give it a try. You don't know if it will work for you or not until you try it. So don't say, "Oh, that won't work for me," until you've tried it, because I think every woman should read your book. Even a woman, like I said, I thought I had my marriage was fine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now maybe it was okay, but now it's really, really beautiful.
Oh, well, congratulations. I give you all the credit for that. I'd like to give you a wife award here. Dun, da, da. Best
Thank you.
wife, right? I mean, there are 10 people's lives in your family, right, that you've impacted. And I really hear that you've created something beyond just, okay, here's marriage. This is, here's our family life. It's kind of a grind.
Mhm.
But you've brought a lot of beauty in and humility and accountability that's created something beyond sounds like what you imagined you'd be able to create at this point.
It
And it's
is.
affecting your kids. It's
Mhm.
impacting your kids in a lovely way. So well done. I know that takes a lot of courage and commitment to do that. So congratulations to you. If you could go back and tell Maxine what you know now, what do you think you'd say to her?
The being controlling isn't worth it. And honestly, I'm getting all the things that I wanted without being controlling now. Um,
Maybe more
so
so, right?
yeah, really, yeah, yeah. I've just learned how to ask. I don't know if I have time for one more story, but
Oh yeah,
uh,
you do.
uh I had so of all the things I like to cajole my husband into doing, I had found a stock tank on Facebook Market for a really good deal and made him go pick it up for me like 2 years ago, because I wanted to have I like outdoor water gardens.
Hmm.
And I had found this neat way to do one where you did not have to dig a hole, and it was cute and aesthetically, everything was up with a stock tank. And so I'd found it, and he had to go rent a U-Haul to go get it. And this was a few years ago. So it was grumbly, he poked me about it, but he did. Anyway, it sat there for a long time, and I had plans, but we were waiting on our garage to be finished, and then it was. And so this was last spring, and I really wanted it to be done before the fall so I could enjoy it. But that's where I really had to dig deep of how do I express this desire, and how do I make it pure? Because I was struggling with it being pure. I really wanted it done. And so I went back through your surrendered and empowered wife, looking at all your examples, and I decided, you know what? I need to let it go. If it doesn't happen, that needs to be okay. And then I focused, when he would bring it up, which didn't happen but a few times, I focused on what my part was, and left it at that. And my old self would have just laughed at me and said, that's never going to work. But it did, just by me saying, when you are able to get the electricity in so we can put the pond up, I'm so looking forward to, I'm going to move these flowers there, and I'm planting this and focusing on my part. Then he realized that that would make me happy. And so it wasn't too much after that where I went to run errands on a Saturday, and I came home to him. He had told me he had other plans that day, but he was putting in the electric line so that he could then put the pond there for me. And, my old self would not have believed that was possible without like reminding him he needed to do it.
Right. And I love this. I also love you describing, because what I hear you saying is you were kind of dreaming, you were enjoying and anticipating how much you were going to love this outdoor water garden and where you're going to put these flowers or those flowers and how beautiful it was going to be. Like that was kind of an enjoyable process for you too. It sounds like probably more enjoyable than saying, when are you going to, can you make time, why are you just sitting here? You could be putting in my water garden or whatever. You could be running the electrical. I mean, I'm just thinking of myself here, but no. And so he put it in, and I bet he felt, I bet it created a nice little intimate connection between.
It did, because I tell him every time I look at it, I mean, it makes me happy. Yeah.
It's the gift that keeps on giving. And he's
It
such
is.
a
It
successful husband. He made his wife happy. Oh, well, this is great. Maxine, thank you so much. This is it's very inspiring to hear your story and hear how transformed you are, how you've become your best self. So you can have this great marriage where your husband's inspired and you feel so taken care of. It's what we all want. So thank you so much for showing us how it's done.
Thank you, Laura.
What's it really like to be a relationship coach, and how do wildly successful relationship coaches get that way anyway? Find out by listening to the Successful Relationship Coach podcast with Master Relationship Coach Kathy Murray, one of the best relationship coaches in the world. She has helped so many relationship coaches become wildly successful, including me. She shares her secrets every week on the Successful Relationship Coach podcast. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, we're going to unpack My Kids Don't Respect Me. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that to the companies that make tea bags that are too big to fit in my tea caddy, I have just one question. Why are you doing this to me?